Good morning. At this time, I'll ask Dr. Moore, the Director of Accountability and Testing, to come forward to share some of the updates. Um, This will be an ongoing process with this. I actually brought with me last year's accountability manual that was for the testing in the spring, and it was published on July 8th of 2022. First correction was February 21st of 2023. Additional updates were made on March 2nd, 2023, May 18th, 2023, and then May 30th, 2023, which means our testing was finished before the accountability manual for last year was finished. So it has continued over the last few years to be, we're flying the plane while we're building it. So this will be the first round, and then we will probably be bringing back more updates as this accountability system has made some dramatic changes for our students. So if you'll go ahead, Dr. Moore.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. Today, I just want to share with you the major changes to the accountability model. And like Dr. McLeod said, this is a living document that is changed frequently. And so it's like our quote unquote Bible that we use for school accountability. I'm going to kind of just start with anytime I talk about accountability because it has mixed feelings or mixed emotions when you look at the term accountability. And so on the next slide, it just talks about, it's one of my favorite quotes from Stephen Covey, accountability breeds responsibility. And so this presentation is going to talk mostly about, how we're responding to this. And when we talk about accountability, it always breeds responsibility. So even though accountability sometimes can be one of those topics that we kind of want to shy away from, but it should breed responsibility. So we want to respond to these measures. All right, so we can move to the next slide. Just a little bit of a background so everyone has a context. The Accountability Manual is created by an organization called the South Carolina Oversight Committee. So you'll hear the acronym EOC, not to be confused with end of course, but sometimes we'll use that acronym, but it's standing for the Oversight Committee. And they were formed to specifically to respond to legislation that was created in 1998, the Education Accountability Act, and there's a link that is available for you. That act was recently amended in 2017, but essentially that law requires the State Department of Education and districts to establish a performance-based accountability system, an emphasis on performance-based for public education, which focuses on improving teaching and learning. So the South Carolina Oversight Committee is dedicated to support this legislation, and they are an independent, nonpartisan group made of 18 educators. So it's very similar to the Department of Ed, but much smaller. These are elected officials, 18 educators, business people, and elected officials who have been appointed by the legislator and governor to enact this act. And so they provide a lot of the guidance for school districts as far as how we will be operating to ensure that we're doing what we need to do to improve teaching and learning. The next slide just gives you a little bit more information about their role. They provide regular and routine, let's go back just one slide. They provide regular, routine, and ongoing review of the state's education improvement process. So they're constantly reviewing our process. They work closely with the Department of Ed regarding this, and hence the constant revisions to the accountability manual. They evaluate the standards of our schools that must be met to build the education system that we need to compete in this century, and they assess how our schools are doing. So two big things that they're responsible for: the accountability manual, which we've talked about earlier, and there's a link on this slide that will take you to the accountability manual, and you also have access to the different changes. There's actually a version where you can see all of the changes that they have been making if you're interested in that information. It is available to the public, and they're also responsible for the South Carolina report cards for schools and districts. So the district and school report cards that come out, they are responsible for coming up with the matrices for accountability, the formulas, everything needed to calculate those scores and ratings for schools and districts. So these are this is the organization that makes changes to accountability. Okay. Next slide. There are three major changes, and it should be 1, 2, 3. So I apologize for those ones, but there are three major changes to the accountability manual. One is the on track to graduate metric, and we'll talk about that change, as well as the 5-year student success metric and the added value growth metric. Now, the first two on that list refer to or apply to high schools. The last one applies to middle and elementary schools. So that on track to graduate metric, 5-year student success metric, those apply to high schools. And then the last one, added value growth metric, applies to middle and elementary schools. So we're going to unpack each of those. The next slide, we'll get into the on track for success measures. Okay, we can go to the next slide. So this is the research that the EOC, or Education Oversight Committee, used to determine the need for this metric. Students who end their first year in high school on track, as defined in that CCSR study, and this study was completed in Chicago. There's a research study that was completed in Chicago that says that students who end their first year of high school on track were almost 4 times more likely to graduate from high school than those who were off track. And so that research really informed the need to create a new metric for measuring high school performance. So a student's on-track status was more predictive of high school graduation than their race, ethnicity, their level of poverty, or their test scores. And so that's why they felt the need to create a measure to capture where are our students being on track for graduation starting with their freshman year. Next slide. The on track to graduation measure is a rollout. There's a rollout plan that applies here, and students are considered on track after completing each year with 6 or more credits, including 1 math and 1 English. So you're on track for graduation in your freshman year, at the end of your freshman year, if you have at least 6 credits, and 1 of those credits are in math and 1 are in English. So the Education Oversight will start collecting data from all high schools to see who are those students who in fact finish their freshman year with at least 6 credits, and 1 of them being in math and the other in English. If the number of students that fit that criteria are considered on track for graduation. So there's a rollout plan. They will start reporting it, but not scoring it. And what that means is you'll start seeing on this coming report card, not the one that's going to be released, but the 2024 report card, you'll see where our high schools stand. How many students do we have on track for graduation? So they will start reporting it, but they will not start scoring it until the school year 24-25. So it will not be used for calculations for scores and ratings of high schools until the year 24-25. And that will be with the 9GR 24 and 25, that group of students. But they are starting to measure that now. So on the report cards, you'll see it reported, but not scored. And then starting with the next year's report card, they will report it and score it. So this slide will give you just an outline of how they will be rolling it out across the state. And of course, school year 25-26, all of those students from 9GR 24 through 9GR 26 will be reported and scored. And so it'll be almost like a phase-in model. So let me pause. I think we have some questions.
I'll clarify. It's going to show on this report card, but it's not scored. The 9GR 24, which is our 9th graders now, it will be in the 24 report card.
Yes, yes.
percentage our students are on track?
Yes, yes. Based on these criteria, the schools can pull or run reports to see how many students have 6 or more credits, and how many have it in math or read or in English. So they can pull those reports at the school level and see who those students are at this. Yeah, 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 they can.
We're working with School Link at this point to make it easier to pull. Um, We're doing the background work on that right now, and it goes live in January. It is going to make it much easier, and it's will also assist with our um, course catalog. Um, It'll assist guidance with being able to help make sure these students are on the correct pathways. So we are using a resource to make that easier. And we are now meeting with the counselors in preparation for this, as well as the department as a whole. And we are having those discussions starting at the principal level and moving down into the school level, because this is also part of the state UGP, uniform grading policy, and so there's not choice in that. We have to make sure that our students are prepared for this change in the accountability system, and our teachers and our community, because if you don't have those 6 credits, and one of them's not math and one of them's not English, you will not become a sophomore. This law states that you can't. You've got to stay at your freshman status until you've earned that.
Well, let's say the students took the English and the math. Does
That,
that carry?
that
over?
does carry over.
Okay.
That's being generated from the school level, and when they're having their conferences, they're discussing this with parents, and we're sharing it out. We will be sharing it out with all of our um, media resources that are available also. But it really begins those discussions when they're having their meetings for their IGPs, which start in 8th grade, and to the counselors and the career specialists both work with the teachers and the administration at the schools to ensure that the students and the parents know the process moving forward.
You said what the consequence. January, you've completed. Then we're going to do with those students.
Yep.
You know, sort of. I get they're not a sophomore, but that is sort of a not a punishment, but it's a negative consequence. But what are we going to do in the meanwhile to stop that?
We've put in place semester with reviewing each semester with the counselors, the transcripts. So that's right where we should be catching those to make sure if that student wasn't successful, they need to retake the class, what supports they need to have in place to retake. And we're also working on content recovery within the semester as we're going, because you're not going to, if you didn't master the content in Unit 1, you're going to need that to go to Unit 2. So we're putting structures in place with after-school tutoring and Saturday tutoring and things like that to be able to provide additional assistance for the students.
What about summer
And we also still have summer school as necessary, and it's on a proficiency model also.
All right. Any other questions? We can move to the next slide, Ms. Scott. This second indicator is the 5-year student success indicator. And so it really gives us an opportunity to capture those kids who graduate beyond 4 years. Who we have a lot of students that graduate in the 5th year. And so this measure will allow for districts to receive credit and schools to receive credit for those students who graduate within that 5th year or have success within that 5th year. So in essence, this indicator freezes the graduation cohort file so that the 5-year outcomes can only improve from 4-year scores. Now, this does not replace the 4-year graduation rate, but it allows for another opportunity for students, for schools and districts to get credit for those students who did graduate or complete the requirements within that 5th year. And it also includes successful student outcomes within 5 years of starting high school, and that includes the GED and the high school employability credential. There's more information about the high school employability credential listed in this slide, but this is just another opportunity for districts and schools to get credit for those students who needed just another year to indicate success. So now on report cards, it will be reported for the 2023 report cards, those students who are who finished within that 5th year, and then starting with the 2024 report cards, it will be scored and included in the point system for schools and districts. So I'll pause for any questions about this change as well. We can go to the next slide. The added value growth model. Remember, this change affects elementary and middle schools. Next slide. So in order to talk about this, the background, just want to talk a little bit about norm reference versus criterion reference. That whole perspective of looking at proficiency. Norm reference compares students to other students, and criterion reference compares to the standard. For example, on the left side of that slide, you'll see a note that a teacher left and talks about the class average. Norm references, you see the scores that are listed on the right for just the sample scores for Andrew, Aubrey, and Aiden. If you were comparing their averages to the class average, it's like you're using a norm reference perspective. Criterion reference compares it to the standard. So let's say the standard that teacher set for proficiency is 70%. When you compare those same scores to proficiency, then the students kind of are in a different position. You have 2 of the students who meet the proficiency standard and 1 who doesn't. But if you look at the norm reference, if you compare them to class average, you have 2 students or 1 student that is above the class average. And so this new way of looking at value added, that model, is going to take the best of a norm reference perspective and criterion reference perspective and use that for students. And so I just want to give you that perspective as we talk about how this is going to affect students. So we can go to the next slide. So South Carolina will use a criterion reference value added model. And what that means, students in grades 4 through 8 will have 2 individual growth target scores. So right now, or in years past, they've only had 1 growth target score, and that target score is basically the score they should receive on the South Carolina Ready test to show that they are showing growth. The EOC will determine if the student reaches this score based on their prior performance. It will indicate that they have shown growth. So when I say target scores, I'm talking about test scores on South Carolina Ready. Yes. Mm-hmm. That will be more of norm reference because you're comparing it to an average. So what this is, they have measures in place that will look at each individual student's performance. They look at their history of scores on the test, and based on that history of scores, they have measures in place that will predict, if they get the score, it's showing that they are making growth, and they compare that to students like that student. So there's an entire, formula and metrics in place that will compare student performance to other students like them who have scored that score and who have shown growth. And they come up with this target score. And so if the student makes that target score on the next time that they take the test, that means that they've shown growth. Mm-hmm. 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 It's just one piece of it. So, well, it gives an opportunity for, using the example that you gave, the seasoned teacher that was able to make more of an impact on that student. It gives an opportunity for schools to get rewarded points for that. So that student was able to meet that targeted score for growth. And then, of course, the formula comes into play. If they meet that targeted score, then the school is given points that go into their calculation for the report card. So it does provide an opportunity for, even if you have a teacher who's not as seasoned, who was not able to impact that student as well, and for reasonable reasons, but then you have the next year a seasoned teacher to impact that student, the student grow. It gives an opportunity for schools and districts to get credit for that. Now, like you said, it's only one piece of this data puzzle. It's not the complete picture.
Just for clarification, with the median annual target score, previously, all we were told was, you need to grow. You need to grow, you need to grow, you need to grow. We were given no point at which we needed each student to grow. We didn't know until after all the scores had come in and then the state rank ordered us, oh, you didn't grow enough. This gives the teachers no going in now. This student is here, this is where they need to be to get to the 50th percentile, which is the median annual target score. So they at least know what number to be shooting for.
Yeah, I understand that helps.
Yeah, and then they also, we know we have students that have a lot of gaps in their skills that we've been working on. That added value target score, if you're behind, you need to grow more than some of the students sitting around you to make sure that you get to the grade level standard proficiency. So that gives even more in the point system for our teachers that are, doing these heavy lifts, because as we know, we have students that still have skills gaps that we're working on, but you still have to teach the grade expectation. So they're having to scaffold and provide more interventions and resources for those students to help them catch up, that by the time they're in leaving 8th grade, they're all on target. I think the growth measure, the fact that they are looking more intensely at that versus hitting a cut score to go up to the next category, I think that that's a positive with the system. And you have to grow them all. There's no bubble kids, like there used to be years ago. No bubble kids. They all have to grow.
So each student will receive a targeted score. The mean annual or the MAT is just the amount of growth that a student should make based on their prior year scores. So students who meet that MAT, they receive 1 point in the calculation. But for those students who grew and were able to achieve higher results on the test, we have this new measure, the added value target score, which reflects a more progressive amount. So this is a higher cut score that is designed to move students toward proficiency. So those students who meet that AVT are more in line with being on proficiency, on track for proficiency on the South Carolina Ready Assessment. And those students receive more points. And so this is where the difference comes in, because in years prior, students would get just 1 point for MATs, but now that we have added value, because for those students who show high growth, they are able to earn more points for their school. Right. For the next report card, yes, ma'am. All right, next slide. So just to summarize, 3 major changes in the accountability model. We talked about the on track to graduate measure for high schools. Remember, students being on track means they have 6 credits per year with 1 English and 1 math. The 5-year student success measure for high schools, that means we're looking at students who within that 5th year earn the GED or other means to meet the criteria for graduation. Now they're pulling that into the calculations to be reported. And then the 3rd is the student progress measure for elementary and middle schools, specifically with the South Carolina Ready Assessment. And we're looking at those AVTs, or added value growth those AVTs, target scores, as well as MATs, and getting points for those. So those are just a summary of all the changes. Of course, it's a lot of information that's available on the EOC website. If you want to read more about that, or if you want to dig deeper into some of those things, we can definitely do that. But I'll pause for any questions that anyone may have. Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. There wouldn't be. It will be just reported separately as students that are connected to your district who completed those requirements in the 5th year. Yeah. Yeah. So yes, it'll be a separate indicator. So when you're looking at the report card, there will be a separate section that tells you these are the 5-year student success students, and these are the points you earned from that. So it'll be a separate section on the report card. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's exciting change for us. Yeah.
That's correct, and that's state law. And that's why we have after-school Saturdays,
Get
tutoring.
graduate from high school. I'm asking that.
Um, So you mean after 5 years? I'm
After 4 years, I think now you have another method of students who don't meet certain criteria, they don't get a diploma and they get something else, blah, blah. How does that change it?
they have the 5th year to, the change is that we now get credit for those students that took longer to, and some students do, to earn their credits. We've had students, that had that 5th year of high school to earn their diploma. And they earned their diploma, but the district and the schools didn't get credit for that. Now this model is giving us credit for those students.
I'm talking about the student who doesn't meet the criteria year after year after year. What happens to that student?
They're going to be sitting in 9th grade until they earn their credits to go to 10th grade. But when we start to see students struggling at that level, then we're bringing in our MTSS team at the school level to look at what resources the students need, what is the actual problem the student is having. They look at all facets of the student. Is attendance a problem? Are there health problems? Different things like that to get to the core root of what the issue is that is causing the student to not succeed academically. So we don't have that many students that would fall in that place and sit there for 9th grade, because you still have to, as we move up each year, they'll have the same parameters for 10th grade and the same parameters for 11th grade.
But you're wondering what happens if they never meet those parameters, basically.
And some of our students don't. I know it's a state law, but I mean, that's the reality of it that we have to deal with at the local level. That our students aren't going to meet that, and we aren't, sometimes we don't offer or what have you, the opportunity for the student to go during the summer or tutoring or whatever. Maybe they're working and blah, blah, blah. Are we saying now that a student will never graduate? So it seems to me that the school district itself at the level, whether the state law says that you have to do these reports and what have you, there has to be another plan to work with those students. As you have indicated, you have some plan, but it will not, from my perspective, in the real world, address the issue that we have with some of our students, specifically moving from the 8th grade to the 9th grade. And then you're saying, well, you're just going to be in the 9th grade until you reach this level. I mean, we can write it and put it in paper and do all the processes that we need to do, but it doesn't work for our children initially. I mean, it works for a lot of students, but it won't work for the vast majority of students who are not going to make that cut, even with the value added. But now let me get straight on the value added. You only get the value added if you have met the MAT level.
Yes, ma'am.
That's what I thought, and that's what I'm saying. That we have a large number of students who aren't making the MAT, they're not showing progress. And from my perspective, or anyone's perspective, we aren't at the school level doing all, I think we're doing what we can, but we're children and make sure that the children know that they have to attend school and they have to work hard and all those kinds of things in order to graduate. We have a lot of students who are at the level that that wasn't on track totally. But somehow the school district or the school itself made that promise to them or whatever that they would graduate. So now you're saying that the student there's no graduation for that student.
But there wasn't, I mean, that was already an issue, and correct me if I'm wrong,
That's correct.
this is supposed to be trying to address that issue by adding the 5 year,
That's correct. That's correct.
yeah,
And the employability for those students, those special needs students.
right, that's something really new, yeah.
Yes.
So will the special needs students then, what will they get? Do they get some sort of is it a different diploma? I know some states do.
It's an employability credential. That's correct. And it does now count in our accountability system.
Mhm. But I understand what you're saying, it's, trying to come up with to address all of those. I will say, in all my years, and I had a lot of them at adult ed, I got every year hundreds of students, literally hundreds of students, under the age of 20, who came in as ninth grade students over and over again. And this sounds like it's trying to address that, and it's tough to get that perfect.
That's correct.
All right, I'd like to go back to something you said. You said used to, in the State Department, that's what we used to say, hit those bubble kids. Now, the last testing cycle, we still have the bubble kids, don't we?
No, ma'am.
So, are we saying that, my understanding on the bubble kids was, those are the ones who probably are going to be the easiest ones to get up to met. Are they still going to keep the same terminology for progress for these students? Not met, approaching, met, exceeds.
Yes, ma'am.
So,
But the way the accountability system is set up, every child has to grow.
okay,
Every child.
I have you.
I think that is the final slide. If there are no other questions, we did have some state test data that was lifted, so there's some links there for you to take a look at some of our test data, and that takes you to the State Department's website. So 2 links that you can definitely go and look, because that information is now available to the public. So make sure that you take advantage of that if you haven't already. And let's see, the next slide. I like to end with this quote. Test data and report card metrics are only parts of our story, but when we visit schools and talk to educators, observe classrooms, and interact with parents and students, we're able to see the full picture of what is truly happening every day in Sumter schools. So I just want to leave with that thought, and pause if we have any additional questions. So looking at, we can look at test data and report card metrics. They are very useful, and that's what we did today. But there's so much useful information that is beyond just those. I always talk about data being a piece of the puzzle. And so that statement is just to highlight that there are other aspects that create this image of what we are as a district and what's happening in our schools. And so all of that information is useful, and our principals and teachers are using that data every day to impact instruction and to respond to our students and to give them what they need. A lot of times we get the test data and report card metrics at certain parts of the year. And so we'll get that, but they are getting information on a daily and weekly basis that really shapes what's happening in our schools. And so that's just to bring attention to, this is only a piece of the story. It's a valuable piece, but we also want to acknowledge the other things that are happening that inform our decisions as educators. Absolutely. Thank you.
Just one more question.
Yep.
This information, your PowerPoint, when will the teachers begin absorbing this?
So we have talked about these changes. We actually had a member of the Education Oversight Committee come to one of our principals meetings to start this. Our next principals meeting that's scheduled for this month, we're going to go and have a review of these changes, just like we did today, just to remind principals. And then principals start those conversations, and probably already have, with their staffs. And they start having those conversations. Those ABT and MATs that we talked about, they are useful for goal setting with students. So the plan is that even down to the student level, they know what those scores are, and we can start some goal setting with them so that they know, okay, on this test I need to start, I need to work towards these goals, and they are brought into the situation as well. So it's already started, but we're going to do another wave this month, and then of course principals start those discussions in their buildings.
And just out of respect for any person watching this, we use acronyms.
Yes.
Could I get you to back up just a minute and just give us the full words for ABT, MAT, all of that?
So MAT is the median annual target. That set score that we talked about that shows adequate growth. Now you get 1 point if a student reaches that targeted score. ABT is the added value target. So that's a more progressive score on the test. If the students meet that, then students get, they are considered high growth, and they're given more points in the calculation.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So this, state level committee, I know that they will review themselves, but will they take into account, information from the districts, the school districts, and how, while this is important and it's needed, the added value I thought was one thing until you just explained it to us today. We don't take into account the added value of what you stipulated at the end. Those visits, those avenues or workplace concerns that students bring to the table, and like students who go to the career center and all those kinds of concepts that we have in the schools, where in some of these students, they may not have the added value and the MAT totally, but they excel in other areas. They're autistic, they're whatever. I don't see that being taken into accountability for our children as a whole. And I think, I would hope that at some point, from the district level, we would send that message on up to those people who are making those statewide decisions.
Absolutely.
That it just doesn't work simply by MAT score and an added value score.
Now, I would say
There's
that
much more to what our students do and are doing.
absolutely. I agree. And I would say they have created some platforms. We usually have monthly roundtable meetings that we are able to share that dialogue from the district level to representatives from Education Oversight Committee as well as the State Department of Ed. So I attend a testing roundtable. Dr. McLeod attends the instructional roundtable meeting. And so that's an opportunity for us to kind of share a dialogue. How is it, you know, like you said, the concept sounds great at that level, but how does it translate to the district and school level? So we are able to go back and share that feedback with them on a regular basis. And these are new matrices that they're putting in place. And so I'm imagining as we're getting used to them, you know, we'll still have the avenues to kind of say, hey, this, can we tweak this? Can we have a discussion about that? And they're usually very open to that feedback. So they have established some open dialogues in those monthly roundtable meetings that we attend.
And I hope that this helps too. We're not just a district that just teaches English and math.
Yes.
I would like to see us go into the technology high school arena, where students who have gifted hands for, let's say welding, or these are other things that are going to be, they would be highly successful upon graduating, that we will offer much more than just, quote, the hardcore academics.
Mm-hmm.
So, I hope we go that direction too.
Well, now, what Dr. Moore just explained were the changes to the accountability system. That's not the only parts of the metrics, because we do have completers for CTE, that's part of the metric, those kinds of things. So having the Career and Technology Center certainly helps our schools' ratings and our district rating, because we do know that students have different pathways to college or career. And so they are giving part of the metric for that in that college and career metric. It also, you know, the ASVAB, if you make a 31, that's a way to show that you are college, career, or military. So there's 8 metrics within that, and 5 of those are related to the CTE arena. So that tends to be very helpful with our school ratings and overall for our district, to prepare our students for, you know, whatever they want to be when they get grown. I don't think they're grown until about 25 now, now that I have children and grandchildren.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys.
And we'll continue to bring more information. It is a lot. I mean, when the manuals are 200 pages each year, it's a lot. But the goal is to make sure that our students are growing and to help them be as successful as possible for their future, because they're our future. The last time we met, we kind of had to rush through the secondary part of the presentation, so I have asked the secondary team to give some updates on the middle level curriculum instruction and assessment. So if Mr. Phillips and Dr. Kempton, Ms. King, and then Dr. Loss is also here from CTE if he needs to jump in, but this is the middle level, because we have had some changing occurring that we wanted to provide a little more update. So you 3 can go ahead.
Good morning. Thank you for allowing us to come before you and present this vital important information. I hope you find it beneficial, and we'll most definitely entertain any questions as we go or at the end at your pleasure. We want to begin with a quote, a thought to ponder as we present. We 80% of Sumter School District graduates will be college or career ready as indicated on the South Carolina School Report Card.
So keeping that goal in mind, we're going to first talk about English language arts. And so what I have for you here is some cohort data, pre-pandemic to post-pandemic. So we're tracking those groups of students. So the blue represents our current 9th graders, the red represents our current 8th graders, and the gold color represents our current 7th graders. So what we can see from this data when we look at that SC Ready data is that our current 8th and 9th grade students experienced a drop after COVID, from pre-COVID to post-COVID. And there's the blank there for 2020, obviously, because there were no state tests in 2020. Our current 8th grade students haven't recovered to their pre-pandemic levels. So our current 8th grade students are represented in the red, and you can see that they have grown over time, coming back post-pandemic, but we still haven't hit the place where they left, right? They have that experience and drop. Our current 9th grade students did eventually come back and recover, so that's based on their 8th grade scores last year. One thing that has been put in place, specifically this year in our pacing guides, but that teachers were allowed and encouraged to use, was an open access resource called Common Lit. So if you go ahead and change the slide. So I'll give you a little bit of background on this. So this is a study done on Common Lit with New York City middle schoolers in 21 and 22. And what you're seeing there is that these students grew more than what was expected. So their growth was actually greater than what was expected of those students during that time period. And one major change was that they were using that Common Lit curriculum. Okay. It's important to note that some qualitative measures out of that study is that the students felt a strong belonging in their class by using these higher engaging materials. These materials encourage communication, speaking and listening, and having robust discussions and debates about the literature along with the reading and writing. And that created a sense of belonging where students wanted to be in class and wanted to engage with the materials. And that's what they saw from that study from 21-22. Go ahead and turn the slide. Another study here is showing very similar results. And so this study had several key findings. One of them was that the teachers who use Common Lit saw significantly higher levels of academic growth with their students. Another was that Common Lit helped their students improve their English language arts skills. And key finding 3 is that 77% of teachers reported that Common Lit helped them improve their teaching practice, their pedagogical practice. So they felt that they became better teachers from using the materials. Okay, you can turn the slide. They have, we're an e-learning district, so the Chromebook is available. All of this is open access, but their materials are downloadable. I'm more old school, so when I go out and work with teachers, I talk about why don't we, take them off the Chromebook. You can utilize the Chromebook, but it shouldn't be your sole resource. We need to always look at our technology as how it enhances our instruction. No, it's all online. They have customizable Google Docs, so you can get all the stories in paper and pencil so they can physically highlight as well, and I've got some slides about that. Okay, you can turn the slide. All right, so this is specifically, Common Lit reached out and gave us some of our own data. You can see back in 2018, we didn't have many assignments and lessons being distributed through Common Lit. But over the course between 2018 to 2023, you can see our growth with this. It wasn't mandated to be used, but it was provided as a resource, and our teachers really latched onto it. So maybe, you can't say that this is causation, but there is a correlation that our growth post-pandemic in the area of ELA also mirrors our exponential use of Common Lit. The SC Ready scores. So SC Ready scores that I showed you previously, and this is usage reports from Common Lit. So these are two different metrics, but we see the growth in SC Ready scores and the growth in usage coinciding. So it is a correlation. So we have a slide here, go ahead. We have a slide here that shows you how the curriculum is designed. It is both horizontally and vertically aligned. So we have been working for the last 10 years on having vertical team meetings. That's one feature that I do every month, is that all the English Language Arts department chairs meet with me, 6th through 12th. So that we can have that conversation across the grade levels for expectations and you know, just have this open forum. So this curriculum really supports that, because with the reading skills, you can see there through the 6 different units how they are aligned both within the grade level and across the grade levels. Go ahead and turn. So here's a screenshot of what they would see online. Again, the teacher is always the teacher. That's the one message that I always send when I work with teachers. You are always the teacher. Your curriculum helps you with the what, the tools, the stories. It helps you with some higher level questioning and some scaffolded questioning. But at the end of the day, the teacher is always the teacher. She or he has to bring their instructional best practices to whatever curriculum that you're using. So this gives support for the teachers to bring their instructional best practices to the curriculum. The students are able to do digital annotations. The teacher can model that within the online piece. If they want to stay in the online platform, they can do those digital highlighting, which mimics on the state test. They have that as an online testing tool to do digital highlights as well, so that mirrors what they will see on state tests. There are also accessibility tools. I've been out in classrooms this last month noticing we do have quite a few middle school students who are reading well below grade level. So one support that Common Lit has is every student has the read aloud feature. Now the one thing that I work with teachers on is we don't just listen to a text. That's great for accessing and working on our comprehension skills. But if the student's eyes are not on the text as it's being read aloud, then they are not going to be improving, because they have to start making that connection between the print and the sound. So that tool is there for them, and I had to talk with one of the classrooms. I said, you know, this tool is here for you. I expect you to use it if you need it, but you cannot just listen. You have to also read. This is to support your ability as a reader, not to replace. But that is an accessibility tool that's built into the program. Also, there are scaffolded in-text questions that scaffold up through the DOK levels, from just basically what's happening in the text to why is the author making these choices within the text. All right, next slide. So the writing piece of Common Lit, remember in ELA, we kind of have multiple subjects in one, because we teach both reading, writing, vocabulary, and grammar. So there's a whole writing arc to the lessons, and they are both vertically and horizontally articulated as well, so that we're building students' abilities in writing as we move through the grade level and across the grade levels. Okay? So you can see all the different forms of writing represented there. All right, next slide. All right, so this is just a pull out from 6th grade, Unit 1. This is what our 6th grade students have been working on. The teachers were asked to teach Unit 1 this year. This is the first year that we fully implemented Common Lit in our pacing guide. So they were asked to teach this, and their bring back task is to bring back the culminating assessment from Unit 1, which is a literary analysis essay. And so there's the way that the writing is scaffolded within the unit. So we don't just jump straight into an essay with our 6th graders. We work on, well, how do you break down a prompt? How do you write a complete paragraph? How do you choose relevant evidence? Then we start looking also at our exemplar essays, and how did this author in this essay make this happen, the student author make this happen, so that then they can write their own essay, and it goes through outlining and drafting and revising. until they finally publish their end piece. And so that is what the teachers will be bringing back to our professional development this Friday, so that we can look at the state of writing in the district and make some instructional decisions based on what we see. Mhm. Absolutely. That's built and baked into the program. That's as an instructional best practice that teachers should be doing. Our teachers in our ELA task force and our department chair meetings have already been sharing ideas about how do we break down the rubric for students in student-friendly terms. So that's just an instructional best practice that teachers should be doing. Okay, next slide. Okay, and that brings us to mathematics.
Okay. Well, first with math, we want to look at the cohort data, and my data is, I have it by the classes. So in my first cohort, I have the class of 2027, who are our present ninth graders. We have the class of our present eighth graders, and then the class of 2029, which would be our present seventh graders. In the blue, there are, if you look at that key, in the blue we have the meets, the number of students that were exemplary or met and exceeds for 2019, and those are your blue bars for the district. And then, of course, 2020 we did not test, and then in 2021 we see the red bar, and then the gold bar is 2022. And so what we are looking at, what we noticed that is that all cohorts had a significant drop in scores post-pandemic. And overall, when we look at what happened in the last 2 years, the scores have not recovered. But we have to keep in mind that our mission, our goal for our students for the district is that by 2027, 80% of our students will be either college or career ready. And we know that math has a significant impact on whether or not, of course, academically, the college readiness, but it also has an impact on career readiness when you're looking at the career assessments and the skills that are involved in students reaching that benchmark. So what we notice is that although our scores in the districts have not recovered, there are some spots. We had some very bright spots in 2021 and in 2022 with middle school that actually met the state's level, and we had, and in fact, we had a school that actually, they outperformed the state on certain grade bands. So that caused us to begin looking, what is it that they did differently? Because we have a curriculum, we have the pacing guides, and that's across the district. We have a plethora of resources, but what is it that they did differently? And so we'll go to the next slide, please. What they did was they used Math Nation. And what Math Nation is it's a combination of both illustrative math and open-end resources. And Math Nation was adopted by the state of South Carolina about approximately 5 years ago as an added resource for districts and schools to use. Now, when we talk about the history of Math Nation was launched, originally it was launched in the state of Florida to increase algebra scores for students in the public schools of the state of Florida. And it was a partnership between the University of Florida and the Department of Education. And so as a result of that partnership, they found that the scores increased across the state in all demographic areas through the use of Math Nation. And so that was kind of catching on, and so we have other states that added, that wanted Math Nation. They worked with Math Nation. Math Nation was customized for other states. South Carolina is one of those states. So when we look at the research behind Math Nation, this is Ed Reports ratings, and we see that as far as, focus, coherence, the alignment, the usability, for both of those programs, it's at the top. And so what we know, Math Nation is also, we have the illustrative and the open up resources, and then what Math Nation brings to these two resources is that it brings in the study expert videos and the study guides. And I think that's one of the moving forces that helps this program to be so successful. Okay? So, can we move forward, please? Oh, well, it kind of jumped around a little bit. But Math Nation resources are used in states across the nation. But the first four I wanted to talk about: Florida, of course, it started in Florida. We are using it in South Carolina, Mississippi, Michigan. There are extensive research studies as far as the success rates with Math Nation in all of these states. And there are other states, but these were the states that really have done a lot with this program. Okay, so for us, when we talk about the features of Math Nation, why do we like it so much? What is so great about it? Well, first of all, it has those dynamic videos. And the videos cover everything a student needs in order to master middle school math. The videos have examples. They have practice problems that connect math to real life. And additionally, the thing that students love about it is that it gives them a variety of tutors that present the information to them. And so they choose a tutor based on the pace of the presentation or the style. And the tutors are available in English, and of course there are other languages that the tutoring is available. The next section is the practice tools, and I notice it has 111 there. I'm sure it's 1, 2, 3. The next section are the practice tools, and so in each section, students have topics that they can use. There are interactive tests yourself and check your understanding tools, and it gives them instant feedback. This assists the teacher. Kids do, I think at the end of each section, there may be 3 questions. A child works those questions. It determines whether they are right or wrong. If they've made a mistake, they can go back. It gives them the corrected problem, and then they can try it again as many times as they like. Can we go back a slide, please? I think we went up. Okay, we have the math tutorial wall. This is it's a forum that's open every day from 3 to 9 that offers it. They have study experts, there are teachers there, and then there are students that can help students with working through the math. There's also a teacher forum where teachers work with each other, ask questions. I've tried this. What do you guys think about this? They are able to communicate with each other as far as the features and how you're presenting a particular lesson. And Math Nation also has PSAT, SAT, ACT support. They are interactive practices. They are available for download. Students can do that also. Next slide, please. You also have family support videos, and this is unique about this program in that a parent can go in and it explains to a parent what their child is learning, what are the expectations of this particular set of lessons, and what they as a parent can do to assist their child at home with different parts of the lesson. And of course, it has lesson plans. They are detailed lesson plans for teachers. It talks about progressions in those plans. It talks about the, like this, a standard is building on, a middle school standard is building on a particular elementary standard, but it's leading you toward something that's going to happen in maybe high school. They also have the EdXL assessment item bank, and that's it's an unlimited test bank with items that meet the rigor level of state assessments. It has the customized Desmos activities, and the unique thing about Math Nation's Desmos activities, Desmos that they use, it is the same format because it's customized for South Carolina. It's the same Desmos iteration that they will see on SC Ready testing. And it also has differentiation suggestions. Okay.
Right, I also have these presented to you in cohorts. So these are graduating classes. Each cohort is a graduating class. So beginning with the class of 2019, ending with the class of 2023. So the performance listed for the cohort is that group of students' performance on 4th grade, 6th grade, and 8th grade, which was then SC Path Science State Assessments. So as you can see, it's very telling. We see decreases in 6th and 8th grade, that's the green and the rust color bars. We see the decreases pretty much every year. From cohort 1, which was beginning in 2013, all the way to the cohort in 2017 for that grade level, 6th grade. And I know when you looked at this, the data that was presented before, there were some questions about the dip that we noticed in 6th grade. So you're seeing that again here, but you're seeing it differently. You're seeing it by cohorts. I think it's important to track the cohorts. There's a lot of information to be gleaned from the data here. For instance, in the year 2014, South Carolina adopted new science standards. And those new science standards it's where we veered away from the trend in the nation. So the trend in the nation was to adopt the next generation science standards, which was NGSS. 2014, South Carolina decided not to do that. Many other states did. 12 states did immediately adopt that in 2014. Currently, 44 states now use NGSS standards for their science standards, and including South Carolina as of this year. So also we can see from this data clearly we're not meeting the needs of our kids. It's just clear and simple. And let's keep this in perspective and in proper context. These aren't numbers. These are students. We're talking about students and their potential in the future, their readiness for college or career. And this is how we're doing in preparing them for that. And clearly, we've not done it here. And I'm showing you pre-pandemic because as my colleagues have stated, they've talked about going back to pre-pandemic levels. No. In this case, in the case of science, we don't want to go back to pre-pandemic levels in middle school. I mean, look at those numbers. That's not something that's a low bar. We cannot do that. So the data represents the past. So now the question is, what are we going to do to move away from the past? Interesting fact, not represented in this table is the cohort that graduated college in 2019. That cohort, we had data on that cohort to see what was their outcome in college. That 2019 graduating class from college, 23% of them graduated with either a 2 or a 4-year degree. Now that's giving you're seeing it from elementary and now you're hearing it from college. Clearly we have work to do, and a lot of it. Next slide, please. So we have new standards training for South Carolina, 2021 standards. Last year was the bridge year for every grade level except 4th, 6th, and Biology 1 because they were still tested on the old standards last year. So this year is the statewide implementation of the 2021 South Carolina College and Career Ready Science Standards. That is not negotiable. So every classroom is now using those standards. Fortunately for South Carolina, we are now 98% aligned with the next generation science standards. For the most part, the only difference in our standard and the NGSS standard is the indicator. The NGSS standard lists MS for middle school first. We took the MS off and just put a 6, a 7, or 8 for the grade level, but it's the same indicator. That's great because now it opens up many more resources for our teachers to use. It also opens up a very good history of best practices that we can follow from the states that implemented long ago, and including states that implemented new curriculum programs as soon as 2018. So that's what led us to planning a year out. So last year, every district PD day, which was full day, 6 full day sessions, all middle school science teachers completed training on the 2021 standards. But then it became very apparent that the standards require a major shift in the way we have to teach science. In the past, those 2014 standards, you had what's known as the SCPs. Here we go with those acronyms again. But the SCPs are science and engineering practices. That's the doing of science. Those are those science process skills. That was one set of standards. Then we had what's called the disciplinary core ideas, the DCIs. That was your main content piece. And then we had cross-cutting curriculum pieces. Those are the things like patterns, systems. Those are the pieces that students learn and they bring with them from grade level to grade level. But what we've found from research and data is that, and you can see it in the South Carolina state scores as well, most teachers taught just in that DCI area. A lot of teachers did not teach the science practices. A lot of teachers did not teach those curriculum pieces, those common cross-cutting curriculum pieces, because you had to actually combine all 3 of those standards into one to facilitate instruction in the classroom, and that was problematic for a lot of teachers. So they lived in that content area piece. Clearly from the data that didn't meet the needs of our kids when it came time to assess. So after the training, it became very apparent from the teachers and having feedback from the teachers that they needed assistance and support with how to teach this. They said to me, we understand the standards, but knowing how to teach this is going to take some time and some training. We have to make it our own. It's very uncomfortable for a teacher to do something brand new that requires them to change everything. And that's what these standards are doing. So I did the research. I sent out to them the research pieces, got feedback, and I presented to Dr. McLeod, and she looked at it as well. She's also a former science teacher. And we arrived at the same conclusion that the Open SciEd science curriculum provides our teachers and our students with everything they need to be successful with these new standards. This is open source. It is available to every parent, student, or teacher. It's online. It's openscied.org. All educators can have a free account. It's very rigorous, sets the bar in a very high place. It's high quality curriculum. It uses phenomenon-based units, so the kids are investigating problems based on real-world scenarios. For instance, in 6th grade, Unit 6.1 is called Light and Matter. Students are investigating the one-way mirror phenomenon. So they're shown a video of a person standing on one side of a mirror playing a guitar and seeing his reflection, but on the other side is a music teacher who's actually seeing through the glass and can see the other person on the other side. So they have to investigate. How can we look at something that is the same but see things differently? Now, the good thing about that question is you're not going to Google it and get the answer. You're not going to answer it in 5 minutes. You're going to have to do quite a bit of investigation. So then what they do is they do a notice and wonder chart. What did you notice in the video? What do you wonder? That goes back to those KWLs we used to do, and we knew that was good teaching then. So that's a good best practice. Again, best practices are built in here throughout. So they do that, then they develop questions, and they post their questions on what's called a driving question board. Student-generated questions. Now, the teacher already knows where the lesson has to go. The teacher already knows what investigations they need to do. So the teacher pulls their attention to the question on the board that actually is related to the investigation they need to do. But the students feel like, well, that's our question. Now we're going to investigate what we came up with. So you get a maximum amount of buy-in from the students because they feel like they are driving the instruction. So when I spoke with teachers in different states, and I asked them, do the students truly feel like they are driving the instruction? And they said to me, they 100% feel like they're driving. And one teacher even said to me, he was a teacher in New Jersey, he said to me, my student asked me if I ever do a lesson plan because it seems like all we ever do is what they give me to do. Now, you haven't heard that very often, have you? Next slide, please. So our standards, since 2014, were aligned and based on a framework for K-12 science education. The next generation science standards were created from that framework. And as I said, now we are 98% aligned with that set of standards and with that framework for the first time ever in South Carolina. This curriculum was actually written by the folks from NGSS who wrote the standards. This curriculum was field tested in 10 states for 18 months in 5,000 classrooms. And it was an iterative process. The feedback was used, changes were made, field tested all over again. It took 18 months to build the middle school curriculum based on all of that. Next slide, please. So what resources, that's the what, so now the how. What resources are we providing to make a heavy lift an easy lift, an easier lift? Now let me be clear. This is a lot of work for teachers. It's going to be a lot of work. There's a large amount of preparation. Now, there's a give and a take there. This is where I ask for teacher buy-in. The teacher handbook and the teacher guides provide them with every unit plan and every lesson plan. Already written, ready to go. So they're not going to spend very much time on lesson planning at all. But there's a lot of prep because kids are they're interacting, they're doing investigations. So you have to build the things they use in classrooms. So in that 6th grade unit 1, You have to build light boxes. You use banker boxes, and you build these big boxes. And you put different materials in the middle, reflective materials. You have a one-way mirror, you have a plane mirror, and you have a clear glass. And they do investigations to find out why does light interact with those materials differently. And they do that in several rounds, and they create questions throughout. And the teacher has the guidebook that says this is where they need to be, but as I've explained to the teachers, two things have to happen if we're going to be successful. Number one, we have to build your capacity to facilitate, because you're going to have to give some control over to the students. This is student-led, student-driven. You're a facilitator. You're really going to have to be a facilitator. You're going to have to own that. We have to build the teacher's capacity to do this. They don't have it yet. Sure, some of our veteran teachers that taught in this manner, they're already there, but there are quite a number who are not. Yes. Teachers should have an unfunded period. They already have the supplies. Yes, ma'am. I have purchased the supplies. Matter of fact, I used to teach I started teaching in New Orleans area. We didn't have a budget. I learned quickly that my budget for science was whatever I had in my pocket that day. And that was right after Katrina. So I'm kind of different. When I started looking for vendors who could support this, I do what I always do. I ask them, what do they have that's free? I start from free and work my way up. I don't start at list price and work my way down. And I usually negotiate a pretty sweet discount. So from a vendor, I negotiated a 50% discount for the kits. So I was able to provide them with more resources than normally I would be able to. And the state provided us with kit refurbishment funds. So I was able to use kit refurbishment funds to purchase the kits. So they have every single resource. And every single middle school teacher has the kit sitting in their building for their units as we speak. It's already there. Now these are the resources outside of that. The teacher handbook guides, on-demand PD webinars. You actually can watch the webinar for the unit you are going to teach. And you can see that webinar as the student. You'll go through that webinar as a student, and you'll go through that webinar as the teacher. You'll wear both hats so that you can see both sides of that, which is important. The storylines are crucial to the success of this, because the way the new standards are written, you're asking science teachers to bundle the standards together and fashion them around a storyline. I'll give you an example. In the past, we would teach, when we would facilitate or teach instruction on the body systems, we would teach each body system, and then we would teach how the body systems relate to each other and how they interact. Well, you don't do that here. Here you have a storyline, and the storyline is that you meet a young lady named McKenna. McKenna has an illness, and these are the symptoms from her illness. Now you're going to do investigation to determine what causes this illness, and you're going to relate it back to a certain body system. You see, that grabs their attention. That engages them. That brings them along on a story. That kid that would normally shut down after week 2 when you're teaching what is the digestive system, that kid shuts down, no longer engaged. Now, because we want to know how the story ends, we want to know what the outcome is, we're going to stay engaged. And that's at the heart of this. That's a big transformation. Now, the teacher has to be ahead of the students in the storyline, because as one teacher told me, I made a mistake, and I said, no worries, there's nothing you can break we can't fix. She said, I made a mistake. I told them something I shouldn't have told them, because they actually figure it out later. So she found out she had to be even further ahead in the planning than she normally would be. So, next slide, please.
All right, so I don't see our videos
There you
Oh,
go.
there we go. So we asked some of our teachers implementing the curriculum just to provide us some feedback, and so we were able to include a couple. I had another teacher who actually included some feedback from her students. She interviewed her students, but we were having some trouble getting that video to load. So if I can get that, she's gonna work with her media specialist today. We can give it to Ms. Scott put into the board docs. But here, if you can click on the videos, if they'll play. They played in the back. Let's see if they play up front. You can hear just a little snippet about teachers who are using Common Lit. Okay, is there another one? Because there's supposed to be two. Okay, I'll click on that one.
Next slide, please.
Okay. Um,
Next, please.
okay, so we have feedback from, I think I have 2 teachers. I have a couple more, but we've had problems kind of loading their video, but hopefully this is gonna play.
assessment that just ended today. And those are the two indicators that this first unit are based on. You can see the proficiency numbers for this sixth grade class. Those are outstanding numbers. Next slide, please. And the whole success is based on teaching the kids the routines. That's why Unit 1 is vitally important. And Unit 1 is quite slow because you're teaching the kids how to learn this way, but you're teaching them to own the routines that you repeat in every single unit. So that was the feedback. Now we'll move into the support for the teachers for these programs. Yes.
That is the expectation.
For me, there are different cohorts. So the certified full-time teacher, the expectation is they will use this, that they will teach Unit 1, and then we'll come together, we'll gather feedback, and we'll determine what do we need to do with Unit 1 to make it our own and the best fit the needs of our kids. Some of our international teachers do not have the capacity yet to facilitate this type of instruction, so they're using the resources from the textbook that we adopted and from the guides and the pacing guides based on that. And then we have long-term subs. It's a whole other cohort. And some of them are using the online Apex curriculum.
And that's the same with our areas too, with the long-term subs, because they're not certified.
Okay, if they are not, if they are substitutes, we have the Apex curriculum, which is a online curriculum that we're using that can be used district-wide. So we can put those students in those classes onto the Apex curriculum, and they work through Apex.
We have to remember that we need to treat teachers the same way we treat students in many cases. We need to build the capacity of the teachers just as we build capacity of students. So we meet the teachers where they are. So if we do have some phenomenal long-term subs. I have a phenomenal long-term sub in a sixth grade science classroom who's doing a great job with the resources. And we're building her capacity and hoping that she's going to become a full-time certified teacher. We're going to work with her in that regard. So we meet the teachers where they are based on their abilities, and we talk to them, we diagnose that, and then we partner with them. And I have an international teacher who's using the Open SciEd curriculum in sixth grade. And when I visited the classroom, her kids were right on the money. Matter of fact, several of them rushed up to me, eager to show me their drawing of their model. And I could see the evidence of the work. And as you go into these classrooms, you'll see the evidence of the work. And that's a big big change from the past as well. So to answer your question, is determined by that teacher's background and what they bring to the table. I did. Because I'm also going to track the data based on those cohorts. What does the data look like for our full-time certified teachers from anywhere from 1 year of experience to 32? What does the data look like for that that cohort that's using the SAVIS resources that we adopted a couple of years ago, and then what's the data for those Apex kids and those Apex teachers?
Okay. All right, so we just put in the slide to clarify a little bit of the support of what your coordinators, both elementary and secondary, do versus what happens district-wide and then what happens within the school. So as district coordinators, our teams, we analyze local and state data sources. So we do that both with the secondary team and in concert with our elementary colleagues as well, so that we can look at our trends across the district and make those more global decisions. We also coordinate district level professional learning. We have 4 professional learning days given to us as district professional days throughout the year, 1 each quarter. And so we create a long-range plan for professional learning based on our data, both the numbers data from testing and also the feedback that we get from teachers and principals. And we come up with a plan. That plan, we give that plan to Jamie Lassard, who's our PD coach. So that is published going forward into the new school year, where this is the plan for each subject area, elementary through high, of where we plan to go. But we also make that very clear that that plan is living. So as we finish up quarter 1, we get data in, we get feedback from teachers. If we need to tweak the plan going forward and maybe provide a little more support in one area or a little more pedagogical support in another area, we can use that feedback that we get to make those adjustments in real time. So we coordinate that district level professional learning. We guide the development of the standards aligned curriculum resources. So we have curriculum teams that make those decisions as a group, so it's not unilateral. And then we also support our school level instructional teams. So at our middle schools have the assistant principals, a principal, and most of them have a designated instructional coach. And so we work with schools to support that instructional team. And that may look like, I know that the elementary coordinators are working with them on coaching practices. And we talk with them about data and curriculum. What's the feedback? How can we help? Sometimes we're called in to do more specific things. It just depends on what, principals reach out to us and ask us to come in and maybe work with their team on cross-curricular units, cross-curricular ideas. So there's all kinds of things that happen. In August, we go out to every school, or we went out to every school, but it's just a feature that we always do, and we sit down with that instructional team. And we tell them, what it looks like for this year, what's happening. This is where you go find the pacing guides and the curriculum resources, and what can we do to support you. So we start off the conversation very early in the school year so that we can help them with their specific PD plan. So at the school level, the principal is the instructional leader of that school. So that principal is analyzing school level data, establishing the vision for instruction. And the principal is the one who ensures fidelity with the curriculum so that the teachers are teaching what has been decided on as a district. And they're also actively participating in professional learning so that they are aware. So we hope that they're actually participating as well. The school level instructional team includes your principal, your assistant principal, and your instructional coach. And so those are the boots on the ground, that job embedded professional development in the day-to-day. So they're analyzing that school level data. They're providing that school level professional development, that going in the classrooms and working one-on-one with teachers to coach them that's what your school level team is doing there, and then we support them in that effort. Okay, next slide.
So, again, this is just reiterating what you've already stated, the role of the content coordinators. We do have ongoing meetings with different groups. We have PLC groups that meet. We have task force groups that meet. Sometimes we have groups within a school that will ask us to meet. So that's ongoing. That's monthly. We also establish hours where teachers can pop in on a video chat just to get support as needed. For me, I have established a success coach for the curriculum program who's a certified trainer with 8 years experience, and he also will be setting up office hours for those folks doing this new curriculum to pop in and get on-demand help. We observe student-teacher engagement with the curricula. We do regular classroom visits. We have an established schedule that we follow. The only time the three of us will normally be in the same building at the same time is that first time through the district where we meet with all the leadership teams to craft a support plan for each school to make sure we're meeting the needs of those teachers, and to work in concert with that leadership team. And we also go to the classrooms and do Elliott observations so we can gauge the level of engagement in the classroom, because that's an initiative as we go into reaccreditation. So that's part of the Office of Academics team. So we support the school level instructional teams. We make ourselves available to come to PDs. We'll do afternoon, after school, wherever you need us, we'll be there. We collect the feedback from all stakeholders because nothing is perfect as it begins. You can only hope to achieve the high level of success, but you have to go through several iterations of a product to get there. We are very data driven. We have the district common assessments that we do quarterly, and we analyze that data. That also allows us to know which teachers are going to need more help, and so we then will reprioritize based on that. Our schedule is shared with all school leadership teams. So after that first visit, we're all in a different building on any given day. We're never in the same building, so we're spread out, so we can serve more on any one given day. But sometimes we'll be on the way somewhere, and then we'll get a call for a desperate need, and we'll have to, reshift. But we're happy to do so. That's just part of the role. And our role is support. That's what we do. It is a support role.
It looks like the three programs you're using are married to early years. It looks like that, if you're teaching that program correctly, it's going to be, you check off 11.
Go back to your question from before, because we keep getting questions about Chromebooks. Believe me, students are as tired of Chromebooks as teachers are in some cases. I was in a 7th grade classroom yesterday. I couldn't even find a Chromebook. Kids had calculators. They were calculating density of 3 different liquids that they had used in several investigations, and were doing it quite well. And this was a 7th grade middle school classroom.
And then, are your pacing guides up to date with your program?
Yes.
For me, the pacing guide is not where they can be right now. It's there, but for instance, in 6.1, it says you're going to complete this in 18 days. That's impossible. The expectation is not for them to complete this in 18 days. We're going to move it at the pace of the student and at the pace of the teacher. Now, we're going to make effective use of time. We're not going to spend 55 minutes on a lesson that requires you to show a 2-minute video. We're not going to do that. But we have to move at the pace of the students in that first unit, and we have to move at the pace of the teachers in that first unit. And the data from teachers who have facilitated this instruction for 3 years has indicated Unit 1 is slow. Take pacing out of the equation for Unit 1. Unit 2 is quicker because you learn the routines. It's becoming a little easier. You don't have to teach the kids the learning process as much in the following units. But since those routines are repeated unit to unit, it becomes quicker and quicker. So I've asked, in meeting with the school leadership teams, I ask them, please don't pressure the teachers on the pacing. We're going to be in different places at different times, but we'll all get there at the end.
That's the only reason I think the pacing there is important, is because when it comes time to do the, order of, whatever tasks you're given, to gather data to see if they're on track, they're in line with where they should be.
Well, keep in mind, data has more than one purpose. So we deploy the quarterly assessments as we've been directed to do. And the quarterly assessment is based on the pacing guide. Well, the directions to the teacher states, if you have taught that standard, hold the students accountable. If you have not taught that standard, do not hold the student accountable, back that out of the score, but use that data as pre-test data, because now you know their level before you begin instruction on that standard. You see, it still has purpose. Okay.
I only ask that because a parent is concerned, a parent of the child is tested on something that pacing-wise isn't coordinated.
Teachers have the ability to edit the scores, and that's been made clear. But the grading ultimately is at the decision of the school level team, leadership team. We don't make that decision. We can only make suggestions.
But if the parent is possibly asking them in the subject,
Sure. We want to get the full bang for the buck when we do assessments, because we're taking kids away from instruction. So we have to make sure we're getting everything we can from that assessment, so it's beneficial. This is a statement from our new chairman, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Brown, and they're fitting for the moment and the times that we're in. Change is uncomfortable. We're all comfortable not changing, but I'd rather be uncomfortable changing today than lose tomorrow. You must get comfortable being uncomfortable. We're going to have to get outside of our comfort zone.
While we have yet to prove with 100% certainty that the new curriculum will increase the college and career readiness of all students to the goal of 80% by 2027, we do know with 100% certainty that we must change today to ensure that our students succeed tomorrow.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, the general may have called it uncomfortable. We call it productive struggle. and we expect our children to embrace that, but sometimes as adults it's hard for us to embrace it too when we're stepping out and doing something new based on the data that we have. And as you saw, a lot of research went into it, because I'm very much a proponent of research-based to ensure that we are making the best decisions for our students and our staff.
I know we have a number of families.
It's great what we heard. I think my concern is still the number of classes we have that are just substitute teachers.
Yes.
I think that has got to be, I know it's being addressed and the district is trying, but that is really a major issue.
I agree with you, and I'm concerned with Apex, when you have these other programs,
Right.
and then we're having to say, well, sorry, but you get Apex.
Oh, we agree. We know that the teacher in the classroom is the number one factor in student engagement is number two.
To your point though, didn't they say at some point that 44 states are using, so it may not be them, it may be that
Sure, Miss Galloway can help us make like a little video of some type, with students where they can actually see engagement and they can hear what things like we heard with the teachers. We're always looking to market.